6:01.
Good evening, everybody. Would you join us in pledge allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, we're up.
Yes, sir. Yes, good evening, everybody. As you can see, our chairman, Judy Colby, isn't here tonight. She is doing what health officials across America are saying. You're in that category. You need to watch out what's going on. You need to stay home. I'm sure she'd like to be here, and she'll be back when we know it, and we will carry on in the meantime. And John would like to update us on what is going on in Guiding Drawing.
Following up on what Dennis said, I mean, this coronavirus thing has taken up a lot of our time. He and I have coordinated the appropriate response at this point, and it could very well become much more restrictive in a relatively short time. We've sent it to the board and to the media. We've sent a list of our suggestions, rules for employees, and also the cover note from me. We're in a high risk area. We're a county. Lincoln and Piscataquis have been rated the two riskiest counties for people with this threat. We have a rural population. We also have a large elderly population, and they're the most vulnerable. And the cutoff apparently is 70-ish. And anybody with any illness, respiratory problems, so on and so forth, is also high risk. You will notice from the configuration there, we're trying to keep that appropriate social distance, which is 6 feet, and that's why there's only a handful of people here. We put a restriction on the number of people for this live meeting, and this, in fact, maybe quite a while before we get back to having our regular numbers of the public at large. Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later, but we are to get hit quite hard, unfortunately. We're next. China first, and moving towards Europe. Europe is a mess, and they're frantically trying to get it under control. People are confined to their homes, etc. So they're discouraging any gatherings. 10 seems to be the biggest number. They say if you want to go out for a walk, for fresh air, go out by yourself. And they will be restricting elderly people to their homes. Some of the steps we've taken that so far, we put a barrier between the staff at the counter. We put a plexiglass barrier there to protect the employees. We have noticed that fewer people are coming into the counter for registrations and so on and so forth. And fortunately having seen a significant drop in the activity, it won't be too much of a transition for us to say that the opening hours will be whatever they might be, and it will be by appointment for certain things to do with registrations of new cars and so on and so forth. And we think that people are beginning to get serious about this whole matter. We've restricted the entrances in the building here to the entrance on the front, and so people don't have to trek the whole area. And up at the transfer station, we're just processing garbage. And it's not because our people do not want to handle the recycling, it's because there's too much interpersonal contact with people at Christmas and trying to get recyclables into this container, that container. Plus, it is a social event for a lot of people, and we have to discourage too close contact, have to keep our social distance. Close the rec center, certainly for the first 2 weeks. No idea what will happen beyond that. And am I missing anything, Dennis? Those are our main things? Yeah. Okay, so we're continuing to monitor, we're getting all sorts of direction from various sources. And tonight we noticed that the public hearing has been canceled because we don't want to get into the situation where it's not considered to be a full public hearing if the public at large can't show up. Apparently there's going to be some direction coming out of Augusta regarding public hearings, public meetings, you know, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And before we go any further, we wait on that. And so that in a nutshell, that's pretty much it. Okay? Yes,
They
ma'am.
closed the schools too.
And they closed the school. Now
That's
you
big.
closed until when?
For now, for 2 weeks.
See, in
And then
North Bay
we'll
Harbor, they closed till April 26th. So
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me at all, if whatever.
Yeah. So we went 2 weeks and then we'll play it by ear.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we're already starting here, unfortunately.
We're doing online learning at the high
Yeah,
school.
but I'm just
and-
talking about the infection, yeah. Okay, so that's all I have to comment.
Very good. I would move that we take item 8 out of order so that our department heads.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? All right.
So that would be, Dennis should be first.
All right, so it is time to renew our Dresden contract. As you guys recall, that was a 3-year contract. It's up this year. Westport's contract also needs to be renewed, but that's a year-to-year, so that's a little more straightforward. I realize that there are many, many different ways that municipalities charge each other for ambulance services, and there's no real set way to do it, and there's no real good way to do it. In some parts of the state, they do it per capita, so I looked at, should we maybe look at per capita instead of the way we're doing it? And then you run into the issue with Westport Island that you kind of run into with Ulmer already. They're upset about the summer residents. How do we account for the summer residents? We don't even know how many there are. We could do a state evaluation, but then you run into a different problem where Westport's worth way more money than Dresden is valuation-wise, so they would end up paying more money for half the calls. I looked at maybe, because what I'm trying to do is make sure that the Wiscasset taxpayers are not subsidizing ambulance service for these towns. I want to make sure they're paying their fair share. And I understand why we're doing it the way we are. So I looked at maybe, should we just charge them 1% of our budget each year? And if you look at that, it turns out to be quite a jump in their fees for this year. Dresden would go to like $46,000 a year. That's based on the net budget after revenues. If you did it on the gross budget, it would be almost twice that. And then I thought, should we do some combination thereof? And they all end up in like really huge increases that I don't know we really want to pass on to one year. So what kind of got me thinking about this is the way we're doing it now, we're billing them for a set amount plus the uncollected runs that we get in that year. So I wondered if that takes into account the runs that we can't bill for, because 30% of the calls that we do, we can't bill for because there's no transport. So we're a transportation company is basically what we are. We get paid to move people. If we end up going and it's an accident, they sign off, or it's a fall and they sign off, yes, we do send them a bill for $150. Nobody ever pays that. So I want to make sure that we're accounting for that 30% in what we're billing them, because there's a cost there. We're sending a truck all the way to Dresden, and we're not getting anything back from it. So does our current funding formula, our billing just for the uncollected, cover what we're doing? And so you should have in your packet that I give you there a spreadsheet that I made up that looks at the cost of actually doing a call. So in Dresden, we'll use Dresden. And I have 2 years of really good hard data there because we have 2 years of call volume and 2 years of what we did on billing. And so what I did with this, as you can see, is I did each municipality's percent of the calls that we do up there. I looked at our direct cost, which is labor, and I know what that is because we know how long it takes us to do a call. So that's labor plus payroll taxes, but it does not include like workers' comp and some of the overhead in there. I looked at mileage. We know how many miles it takes. We know what our mile per gallon is. We know what our fuel costs are. Wear and tear, they are using, in 2018, they use 9% of our wear and tear. They're 9% of our call volume, they're 9% of the wear and tear on the truck. And how much does it cost us in that year to replace that truck over an 8-year replacement period? And then the supplies that we use is a little harder to track, but again, I use the same 9% based on our total budget. So are you with me on that so far? Yeah, okay. So if you look at Dresden for 2018, it cost us $14,231 in direct cost. And this is to do the service up there for those 83 calls. The way we billed it, down on the bottom, was $6,000 for that year. Their uncollected was $6,900. So we billed it at $12,923. So then if you look at the next year, the bottom line, the actual cost was $21,595, and we billed them $18,593. And estimated this year, our actual cost would be $22,400, and we estimate, I have to estimate this year, but I used figures up until March the 1st, based on our run volume so far, and you can see that there's about $1,000 difference in the two. One of the issues that both of the towns has expressed to me in the current funding formula is kind of the unknown of, well, what are we going to get hit with in August or September with uncollected, because they don't know how to budget for that. We can give them an estimate, and we come pretty close. But they would rather know right up front, so they can go to their taxpayers right up front and say, it's going to cost us $25,000 for ambulance service this year. So I wanted to just compare if we changed to a different formula, if it would benefit us or really hurt us to go off the actual cost instead of the uncollected, and then make sure that we're accounting for those unbillable runs, because they're creeping up every year. The unbillable runs are creeping up every year. And so I want to make sure that we're getting something in return for that, because there is an expense for us. And so I ran the same thing for Westport, and the numbers were very, very similar. I ran a scenario of, well, what happens if Alma comes back, and the numbers change, 0.25% for anybody, any one way. There's no big, huge swings in it. If Dresden doesn't sign, Westport Island's not going to get hit with a huge increase by doing this, and vice versa. Anybody that comes on basically just helps out in our revenue. So this to me covers, we're sure we're covering our costs, and whatever we get in building helps to go for the overhead that we have here. So.
Did you say, have you run this by Dresden?
I have not yet, no. I told them that we were thinking about doing something different, but we hadn't presented it. And that was why they were kind of anxious for us to get something, because their budget deal, they need to know what to do. And John and I talked about the current funding formula, and it's just like all of them, it has some pitfalls in it. There's nothing that's 100% perfect. But I'm trying to make sure that, we're getting the most we can, so that the taxpayers of Wiscasset aren't footing the bill for every other town. And it doesn't come out to be a whole lot different in money, but it is better for them. They know right up front what they're going to be paying.
And you're looking for, we're thinking 3 years, right?
I think it's for 3 years, but of course this will have to be adjusted every year depending on what their call volume does and what our expenses do. So when you look at Dresden for 2021, for the proposed amount, I increased the wages based on what my budget is for this year. So the other 2 years were based on current wages, and 2021 going forward is based on new wages. And it's also based on new equipment costs, because equipment costs go up every year. The cost of a new ambulance is going up between 10 and 15% every year. And so, we started at 280,000 for a replacement cost, and for 2021, it's up to 320,000. So those factors just keep rolling in there so that they're paying their share of wearing out of our equipment.
Well, if you think this is better for the town, then fine with me.
I'd like to go with a set figure. Is that what you're?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. So if you look at the proposed 2021, it would be the 25,000 and change.
Because that's what I was, and then you're gonna increase it 1,000, like, are you gonna go with the 22,420 and then the 25,053 and then increase for 2022? Are we looking that far ahead?
So for 2022, once we get our fuel costs, we'll add our fuel costs in. If they go dramatically higher, then the fuel costs will go higher. Ambulance costs, like I said, they're rising 10 or 15% a year. I'll just check and see what the going rates are and what the rate of the cardiac monitors and all the, durable, expensive equipment's going, and they'll go up that percentage amount each year. So if next year, ambulance costs go up 15%, I'll add 15% on top of that.
These look like great numbers.
Yeah.
My only comment is, this looks good, and I know that for years, the town has been footing the bill for these uncollected amounts, and I think, the fact that people are gonna have to pay that is a plus, a definite plus. And I hope that they will realize that it has to be this way.
It does, and I think they do. And I had a long talk with Mr. Richardson like last summer when he came to pay his uncollected bill, and Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, all of those.
And he had some concerns about the way it was being done. He was very, very polite, but very nice about it. There was no problem, but they would just prefer to know right up front what they're getting into each year.
Yeah, yeah, this is a great number.
Sounds good to me.
It's really good to know too, because it seems like in years past, we've kind of thrown a dart at it.
Yeah.
So this is great.
And then we can keep an eye on it. If the uncollected amounts keep inching their way up, then we'll just adjust it
Okay,
accordingly
right.
to make sure that we're accommodating for that.
So you're looking for a motion that would allow you to present those numbers to the two towns?
For the proposed 2021.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to grant Dennis the permission to propose that to the town of Dresden
And I'll second
And
it.
Westport.
and Westport.
It's the same idea for Westport.
So,
I have much more faith in this. As you weren't here, but as you know, we did have some issues with the last one, and
So,
it felt like that when we were
It
negotiating.
felt like there were, anytime that we asked a question, we always felt like, I was just gonna start grabbing numbers, you know what I mean, to see if it would protect us more.
well, and that's what I didn't want to do. I wanted the numbers on paper to show you where I came from on this, so that you can see where it is and what our costs are and what we need to try to recoup from that.
This is great.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? Not, all those in favor?
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay, so the next problem is, what are we doing with the current contract? Because that's still hanging out there. Is that something we want to discuss tonight, or?
We were hoping for a very short meeting, it's up to the board. I mean,
Is this something we need to discuss tonight, and we do it?
I don't know if they want to act on this until we actually tell them what we plan to do with this last contract.
You mean talk about the uncollected?
Yeah, the uncollected, because of the ambiguity and the fact that they were told one thing and
Yeah,
were given something else.
I thought that was maybe going to legal, did it not go? Where do we stand on that?
Didn't go to legal.
Okay,
I think we had them look at it, and they told us that, a contract is a contract, and they signed it.
okay.
But do we want to enforce it under the circumstances of, it wasn't what they thought they were getting?
I thought we decided we wasn't going to enforce it.
I thought so too.
Well, I think we decided
Way back.
to table it for a while to see what happened, was my understanding.
Well, I remember Judy saying we have to bite the bullet on this one.
Okay, then if that's what you decided, then that's what I'll tell them.
Well, that's how I remember it. I don't know, I thought we had.
Charlotte says no.
Well, be a bargaining point as you're entering the new proposal.
And that would be how I'll present it, Here's the new proposal.
We could check the minutes in the morning, just to be sure. You could check the minutes and make sure what we did.
I think you're right, as I hear everybody's version.
Makes sense.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bruce? Well,
Oh, you got one? Everybody got one? Got one. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
I'll just ask Bruce to come along, give a thumbnail sketch of the advantages of the board adopting this and getting it on a warrant. I'm not sure if it's for June, but we might,
Okay.
because the ORC has looked at it, correct?
Pardon me?
The ORC has looked at it.
Yes, they have. I propose that we adopt the MUBEC building code. We have to when we reach 4,000 people. But right at the moment, we're not quite there, but we're really close. And what this will do for me is it'll stop the builders from saying, you can't enforce that, so I'm gonna build it any way I want to. So, with the MUBEC code and if we adopt it, which sooner or later we're gonna have to, then the builder can't say, well, you can't make me do that. So, that's the reason I want it that way. So that I can actually maybe enforce some of these building rules and regulations.
Makes sense.
The other thing I would like to propose is, we don't currently have a certificate of occupancy for residential buildings. We do have it for commercial buildings. The banks don't require it, insurance companies don't require it. But I've got a couple of buildings in town where they built it, I never saw the finished product because nobody had to have a certificate of occupancy. It's just if they want it, then I'll go do it. But these guys, there's a basement here in town I've never seen the plumbing in the basement.
Okay, so I believe you're asking them for a motion to, since this has gone through ORC, you're asking for a motion to put this, joining the MUBEC, put on a warrant for June, hopefully.
I would like to see it enacted,
Uh,
because that way we have more power to enforce the codes and protect the people that the codes are meant to protect.
This would have to go for a vote.
I believe it would.
Yeah. I think it's,
I believe it would have to go to town meeting.
That's fine.
As a warrant article. And do you want to incorporate that certificate of occupancy, which just applies to residential, correct?
Right, because we have it for commercial, but we don't have it for residential.
So
to me.
you'd wish to add requirement of the certificate of occupancy
Right.
also? Okay.
These proposed changes are only for new buildings?
No, if you're doing a remodel on a house, you're adding a room, whatever, it still requires a building code. Anything that gets a permit, as far as building permits, plumbing permits, that's no brainer. You get a plumbing permit, you gotta go by uniform plumbing code. If you get a building permit, you don't have to really go by any code. So there's a lot of stuff I've seen that, okay, well, I suggest you do it this way or not that way, and I'll either say, okay, fine, or, so, see you later.
It's not for the existing building, but the added on
Yeah.
portion.
That's what I want to find out.
If you're adding to an existing building, it's a new, if you're getting a building permit for anything more than even a shed, but if you're getting a building permit for a room addition, something added on, I wanna see it, I wanna know it's done right. And this code will allow me to make sure it's done right.
But if you were adding on, it wouldn't affect what was there.
No. I can only look at something and say it's right or wrong if it's new. I can't go back on something that's already been built and say, I don't like the way they built that, and make you change it. I can't do that.
Okay, well, it's important to protect what is in place.
Basically for new construction, for remodels. just know that if we go over 4,000 people for the next census, we have to adopt it. We don't have to adopt it now, but it's coming. So just,
What happens if we don't adopt?
the state will make you adopt it if you're over 4,000 people.
Oh, okay.
We're almost there.
They say now that if anything under 4,000 people, anything over 2,000 people, you can adopt it if you want to. But if you go over 4,000 people, you have no choice. But just know, you might as well just do it and get it over with.
Well, I think you're right, we are going to go over 4,000. I have your assurances that anything that's here now is grandfathered.
Mhm.
Anything that's here in place now is grandfathered.
It is. I cannot make you, even though in houses like this,
Well, not yet.
I can strongly suggest you might want to do something with it, but that's all I can do.
The addition's gonna be that way to hold it up.
Yeah.
That's right, you gotta go the opposite
That's the
way.
main way.
You gotta go like this to hold it.
Makes sense. Do you want a motion?
Yes, the lease ready as is to go.
Yeah, because the ORC has reviewed this.
Yes, they have.
And they want to present it to the board to
Yeah.
get permission to put on a warrant. How about the certificate of occupancy?
I asked them about that too, but I think they're gonna ask you about it also.
But, so at this point, you're not asking for, you can't?
No, I'm asking for a certificate of occupancy too from the board, but I suggested it to the ORC.
So do you want two motions or we'll
Yeah,
put the two together? Two together, okay.
I'll make the motion that we accept this main contractor directory of main building code, energy code, and certificate of occupancy for new builds
Residential.
in the residential category.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait, we're putting it on the warrant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from anyone?
People should vote on it. That's all I care about.
It'll be on the warrant.
Yep, perfect.
All those in favor of the motion?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Any comments on the department head report? Other than if the police chief was here, I was gonna commend him on the work that his officers have been doing the last month.
It's amazing.
They're keeping busy.
Yeah.
Very good.
They really are. Where's the fire chief on this? Well, I know, where is he on the agenda?
He is 10C.
All right, I move that we take 10C out of order so we can.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you. So, for several years now, the fire department, along with all the other departments, have been warning the board and the townspeople that the apparatus fleets are getting older and costing more in the way of maintenance. Our oldest apparatus is our ladder truck. It's a 1989 Tebow 75-foot aerial ladder. Has a 1,250 gallon per minute pump and a 300 gallon water tank. This year it's 31 years old. Just imagine driving a 31-year-old car around. It's several years now, its maintenance costs have been increasing, and it's now to the point where they had a failure last summer, and the board's decided not to put any more money into that vehicle, leaving us without a functioning ladder truck. As you know, the fire department's been going through a top-to-bottom review with a gentleman named Sherm Leahy. He's well respected in the community, in the firefighting community. About 3 weeks ago, I got an email from Peter Rhines, who was our interim fire chief, that Sherman notified him that Cape Elizabeth Fire Department was replacing their ladder truck with a brand new one to the tune of about $1.2 million, which is pretty steep. And they were interested in selling their old ladder truck, which is a 1993 100-foot Seagrave ladder truck. It doesn't have a pump, doesn't have a water tank, which are systems that seem to me would be less likely to fail and you wouldn't have to maintain them as much. So this truck has been refurbished about 7 years ago. And a refurbish of a fire truck is kind of like a restoration of an antique auto. They take the whole thing down, right down to bare metal. This truck, they actually cleaned all the compartments, sandblasted everything, repainted everything with a tough type paint. They replaced the rear fenders, upgraded all the LED, all the emergency lighting to energy efficient LED lighting. And they're asking $30,000 for this truck. That could easily last us 7 to 10 years conservatively. The following Friday, after I got the email from Peter, I sent it to John. He said, let's go down and look at it. So the following Friday, Peter and I, and Ted and Scott, the town mechanic, went down and looked the truck all over. When we got there, Scott and Ted were on the creepers underneath, rolling around, checking everything out, top to bottom. After the four of us went through it, we talked with Chief Gleason, who's the chief in Cape Elizabeth. After we all went through it, I ran the stick. It was very smooth. Peter drove it around. It drove very nice. Ted and Scott looked it all over. The four of us were in strong agreement that it would make a very good addition to our apparatus fleet. And in talking with Chief Gleason, he seemed to indicate that if he was to receive his asking price for it, he would throw in the full complement of ground ladders that are on the truck, tools, radio, a substantial amount of equipment that would be advantageous for us to take advantage of. In talking with the department members, they all feel that a ladder truck is something that we really need to have in Wiscasset. It's a stable platform to work from. It protects businesses, it protects property. They just feel very strongly that a ladder truck is something that they would like to maintain in the fleet. The Cape Elizabeth truck, actually, their new truck went into service last Wednesday, so it's available today. It's all certified, ready to go. If we did purchase this truck, it would be just a matter of getting the proper training for our members on the truck, and it could be in service.
In the last 5 years, I was on the board years ago when we stopped putting money into it, Chief. And Tim Mary was sitting next to me here as a selectman, and he was the chief, and what he gave as an opinion was that the town really didn't need a ladder truck. So I get that, and when I asked the town manager is, in the last 5 years, let's say, how many calls would there be for our ladder truck? And I'm not saying the price or
No, I completely understand. And schools of thought vary on ladder trucks. You can reach a 3-story building
Sure.
with a ground ladder.
Right.
It's just not as stable. And it takes one person to put an aerial ladder up rather than 2 or 3, depending on how big the ladder is. In the last 4 or 5 years, conservatively, it could have been used 25 a year.
Sure.
So 75 calls.
Right. Because this was mine, and I go back to when Bill Curtis sat next to me. Could we use like a different truck? So let's say that we get rid of the ladder truck. Would it be better for the Wiscasset Fire Department to take that $30,000 and put it into, you would know better than I would, so when you say 25 calls Would another truck help us out?
25
with-
calls a year.
Right,
Right.
right, would another truck help us out? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's,
Not really because of the specialty that the ladder truck gives you. It gives you 75 foot or 100 foot reach. And it's not only, we don't have tall buildings in town. I mean, our tallest building is 3 or 4 stories maybe, other than maybe Mason Station. What it does give you is that horizontal reach more than, because houses are set far from the road. You can't always get the ladder truck into the driveway, but if you can reach it, it gives you a much more stable platform to work off, rather than standing on the roof in the middle of the winter in ice and snow.
perfect, no. I think Ben has sat next to me long enough to know that ladder truck in there has been a kind of we've put, I would guess $25,000 into it, and it hasn't rolled,
Yeah.
So it's hard for me, you know what I mean, to see it after all these years, so that's all I was asking, thank you.
As somebody in the closeout business, God forbid we ever needed a ladder truck at the high school or the elementary school, that's when you need it, because they don't need it to get up there, they need it to get above it and fight it from above. And being in the closeout business, if we've spent 25 grand on our old truck, and we can get a functioning truck that's been used up until last week, we gotta be crazy not to buy it.
No, I just had to, like I said, Chief, I just had to put my 2 cents
Do
in.
you due diligence? Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how many here remember, but I remember the ladder truck decades ago, probably in the 80s, when one of the buildings on the Main Street caught on fire, and we had the ladder truck. If we did not have the ladder truck, or did not have it at that time, the street side of Main Street might have been flattened, and just bricks would be left. So I think for $30,000, it's a good investment, and like Al said, fighting fire from above is quite often something you need to do, and I think, to me, it's a no-brainer.
I remember when Fire Chief Gordon Mary first proposed it. He talked about buildings like Shaw's and the supermarket on the other side of the road. They're not very tall, but you can get up and get after them.
And that's more, when people think about a ladder truck, they go, well, what do you need a 100-foot ladder for? You don't have any buildings that tall, but you have them that are 70 feet off the road that you can easily get to the roof.
And you're not paying for a 100-foot truck.
Right.
You're not paying for a 100-foot truck.
Okay?
So, yeah, I totally support getting this truck, but where do we get the money?
I was gonna say that we could pass a motion that we assure the chief we're doing the budget process, and whether we put it on for taxation or capital improvement, that we will have it on the warrant. I think that's my thinking.
Will they sell to someone else?
They did say that the Portland Fire Department was looking very hard at it, to send it to one of the islands in Casco Bay. So I'm not sure
If we can wait till
give
June.
them, some sort of assurance or.
Well, we can assure them we'll have it on our warrant in June. We can't do more than that.
That'd be enough to get us the ladder, if we make a commitment, I don't know. It's not a
I
burden.
can call Chief Gleason tomorrow and definitely get his feel for it.
So it's not something we would just decide to, like, yes, let's do this. It has to go to the voters.
I think we'll probably use the, capital improvement money and replacement places.
Yeah. We only have 20,000 contingent, so. I suppose if they wanted some sort of down payment or something, we could do that, maybe. The ladder truck we have, is there any value in that?
I believe there is. I mean, the motor itself only has 17,000 miles on it. It's got a good motor, good transmission. The pump is serviceable. I think conservatively, you could get 5,000, probably much more than that, depending on, who it was that wanted it and what they wanted to use it for.
I think it sounds like a good deal all the way around.
And you might want to look into getting some feelers about who might want to buy that engine.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We need a motion or something?
No, we'll take care of it, buddy. Here's all the department heads for the moment.
We've got a man hiding behind the podium, Rob.
Oh, yes, yes, I am sorry. Where did you fall on this? Oh, same, okay. Right ahead.
My name is Rob Lawley, and I'm the superintendent of the sewer plant. And I'm only going to call your attention to the first page, you can ignore the rest of the stuff. But this is the copy of an agreement that I would like to have the select board's permission to use in regards to the new breweries that are coming to town. Our ordinances are not terribly specific to address the high BOD and TSS effluents that these types of establishments have. And so we originally went to the Planning Ordinance Board to discuss it and see what could we do. These two businesses are coming to town. They're going to be here quicker than we could ever get any ordinances put in place. So it was suggested that we draft an agreement letter that the breweries hopefully would agree to comply by. The first page is simply an enlargement of the agreement so you can read it. The second page is the actual agreement, and I realize it's got some small print. But what's happening is one of the breweries is a fairly nice operation called Bath Ale Works, and they have well, this would be a satellite of the ones in Bath. They're professional, very clean looking, and on the third page of this is sort of a picture of what their tanks would look like. But if you flip the page again, there's a picture of a smaller operation, and one of the operations going in this town is a smaller one. And they may not have the large vats that are nice in chrome and copper and everything. They may be doing it in small 55-gallon drums. And if you see the picture there, I'm simply trying to protect the wastewater system and the plant from things like yeast and barley and hops getting into the sewer system. That would be an undue burden on the ability of the sewer plant to be able to successfully treat the wastewater. So anyway, if this was simply a stopgap, because these two businesses may be in business by the end of the summer, I'm not certain of that. But anyway, what this does is it simply puts in their face the fact that we know that their effluent could be high strength, that we would like them to be willing to, if we asked, to test that effluent water, just to be sure it's not going to be hazardous to the sewer plant and the collection system. And if it was found to be overly high strength, that we would have the ability to ask them at their expense to mitigate and lower the strength of that wastewater. So that's what this is. We went back to the ordinance committee and the planning board were together, and they said that they thought it was a very good idea, but they would like for it to be looked at by legal entities for the town and to be given a thumbs up by the select board. So we took this actually and gave it to a DEP representative named Jim Crowley, and he made some suggested edits which we have incorporated into this. He thinks it's a great idea, but he says this probably isn't going to be a long-term thing that you can use. But I've already been in contact with both of the breweries. Both of the gentlemen seem like they're affable and would be agreeable to this. And because the brewing industry has standards and they have a brewing association and all that, they're very conscious of the fact that they have very high strength effluent discharges. So anyway, John sent this to legal entities to look at. They had just a couple of questions, and one of them was, is there anything in our ordinance that would dictate if we decided they had a very high BOD or TSS, that we could, if it wasn't going to be too harmful, but it was really high, that we would charge them a higher rate for their monthly sewer bill. And there is nothing in the ordinances speaking to that right now. With the two that are coming to town, we would be less likely to do that anyway. We would want them, if there was problems with their effluent, we would want them to lower that BOD or TSS. And that's actually kind of a simple fix. They would just have to take their wastewater, make sure it's cleaned up, still take what's left and then filter it, or let it settle in a tank, similar to what you see outside at Ames, those large totes. They look about this big and they look like it's got a cage around a tank, kind of. They could literally put their effluent waters in that, let it settle out, and then pump the clean stuff into our system, and then save the residue that's settled. But anyway, that's the purpose of this, and what I would like, and you don't have to do it tonight, but I would love to get a thumbs up that we would be able to temporarily use this and would be voluntary in a sense with the two brewers. I think both of them would be amenable to that because we don't want to prohibit anybody from doing business, and we want the businesses to be successful. But this would give us a little leeway if they had problematic effluent waters for us to be able to say, look, you agreed to, at your expense to lessen the impact, and that's what this is. So that's why I have it before you, and if it gets your thumbs up, the planning ordinance people said that it would be fine if we used it, but it depended on your input and your opinion of it.
I think it's a must. I think it's a,
I'm on both ordinance review and planning board,
Yes.
which he came to, which is why I came tonight to actually speak in favor of this. And the only comment we had is it would be easily done where for planning board, we have to get sometimes a letter from the police chief, the fire chief. The sewer department should be added to that, which would
we just,
somewhat rein it in very easily by adding that to our approval process.
just what we talked about, remember, at the last meeting.
And we also thought that it should be not just brewers, but any large user or industrial user in town,
Makes sense.
such as a manufacturing plant or a very large restaurant, that it shouldn't be just targeted to the brewers, it should be targeted to anything that's gonna be a large user of the sewage, which is what brought me here tonight. Thank you.
And ultimately, if it's, toxic or hazardous or whatever, you can refuse it anyway. If you know it's going to mess up the work, so to speak, or cause long-term problems, because we have to keep everything moving through. So,
I think this is very good work, and I don't see why we wouldn't approve this tonight.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very
Because
much.
They shouldn't want to assign this, we need to know that.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with you, we have to protect the sewage.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
I will move that we approve the Town of Wiscasset Sewer System Conditional Discharge Agreement. As presented.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments from the board? Anybody else?
Make it part of the planning board process, make that part of the planning board approval process, which then gives him an enforcement, it allows the planning board to say no because you're not willing to sign the letter.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah,
suggestion.
Like you said, there may be other things coming along that we need to address a little
Yep.
later on. This is a good start, great start. All right, all those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you so
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Appreciate it greatly.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we will go back to the beginning of the agenda. Item 2, approval of the treasurer's warrant. A, payroll warrants for March 6th and March 13th, 2020.
I will make a motion that we accept the payroll warrants for March 6th and March 13th, 2020.
Second?
All those in favor? 2B, accounts payable March 10th, March 17th, 2020.
I move that we accept the accounts payable warrant for the March 10th, 2020 and March 17th, 2020.
Second?
All those in favor? Unanimous. 3, approval of the minutes from March 3rd, 2020. I didn't find anything.
I didn't either. Did anybody find anything? Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of March 3rd, 2020.
Second?
All those in favor? Unanimous. 4A, we received a letter from the Honorable Dan Dow, State Senator, congratulating the Family Holiday Wishes Committee for winning the Spirit of America Award. Thank the Senator, and we thank those who took part in the holiday wishes committee.
Wonderful.
And Chief Harrington had a commendation for one of his officers, and of course he's not here tonight, so we could either do it
The next meeting.
next time.
Yeah.
All right, 5, committee appointments. A, Colleen Gilliam to the Comprehensive Planning Committee.
I'd like to move Colleen for approval.
Second,
All those in favor?
we thank her very much.
6 was a public hearing for the Big Al's fireworks, but for the reasons that John stated earlier, we postponed that till later evening. All right, 7, public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make a public comment?
Susan Robinson, East Cassett. A couple of year or so ago, we had the Turner Creamery rail car down at the Main Street Pier. And then it was removed so that they could do the MDOT work. And that's all finished now, and the car would like to return. And I don't recall if we got a blessing from you or needed permission to have them return, but they'd like to come back. So, since I'm here, what do you think?
I
I,
remember the thing about
The only thing I was gonna ask is, does it have any interference with the work on the pier? That,
No, I won't interfere with it.
no? No, that's
you're
all. I
talking
was
about
just
this guy,
thinking-
right?
The rail car?
Yeah.
I just, because it goes right up next to it, I didn't know if any of the boards needed to be replaced or whatever. right in there.
Welcome them back, and if they'd like another kind of grand reopening, we can go down and do that again.
Absolutely.
Cool, thank
So,
you.
yes, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Susan.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm Don Davis, 21 Middle Street, Wiscasset. Back in the early part of December, I received a notice from the Ordinance Committee, the Ordinance Enforcement Officer, that I was flying an illegal flag in town because it had letters on it. I went to find out, is there an appeal process? Make a long story short, there is, and this is the 4th meeting I've been to for that appeal process. The Ordinance Committee, who I was at last week, felt that they did not have the authority to address the issue, so I have to bring the issue to you folks. It's fairly simple. I have a quick copy here if you'd like that. If I may approach the board.
You certainly may.
Good evening.
Thank you.
That'll be about the longest part of the presentation, I think, just getting that up. If I could draw your attention to Article 7, the exempted signs. It says, 7.1 says the following signs do not require a permit and are permitted in all zoning districts. The first part of these don't really mean much, but if you turn that over, you'll see in section U, decorative banners, flags, and pennants that are not permanently affixed. And then go to the last sentence, and I've highlighted that for you. Banners, flags, and pennants that include letters, words, or numbers, except those that state, quote, open, unquote, are not exempt. Which means that if you put anything besides the word open on a flag, it's illegal to fly in this town. Now, having spent a little bit of time at your seats in another town, in another state, for 6 years, I understand how you inherit things like this from past ordinances that have been presented. But it's also have to be cleaned up somewhere along the line. And my suggestion is that you address this, because if you ride up and down Route 1 from the Woolwich border to the river, right off the bat, without really looking, I find 8 businesses that are in violation of that. And I'm not here to pinpoint businesses or anything like that, so I'm not going to mention what the words are, but if you take a ride, you'll see it yourself.
What was the address on Middle Street?
21. The pole is actually on the Water Street side, because the property runs from Middle Street down to Water Street.
So, you went to the code enforcement officer, the one who said you...
He sent me the first letter and said that I was in violation of the code. I went to see him to see what the process was. I applied for a permit to fly the flag. along with a $40 fee. I also had to apply to the historical committee in order to run their flagpole, so to speak. They didn't want to touch it, they sent it back and said, go back to him. So I went back to him again, at which point I received just at the end of December, 1st of January, I received a cease and desist order that said that if I didn't take it down by February 3rd, I think it was, I was subject to a $100 a day fine. I was leaving town for a few weeks. I do travel a lot for business. I was going to be in Florida for a few weeks. So without causing any issues, I took it down and I told her that I would put up a truce flag or a white flag, which is what's set there for the 3 weeks I was out of town. I then went to the meeting last week thinking that they were the people because they were the ordinance committee, perhaps they're the ones that take a look at this. And they said they're not invested with the authority to change the wording on anything. It falls on your lap, apparently.
I think that we should change the wording. Does that have to go to the town?
Well, I think he's gotten bad advice.
I-
Well, no, I mean, as I understand the ordinance, if you are turned down by a code enforcement officer,
You go to,
you appeal to the appeals board.
right,
Which is what I did.
right.
The appeals board?
I understood that the appellate board and the code enforcement, the code board were the same board, just from what I've been told.
No.
Okay, so there's another board involved in this?
Well, we do have an appeals board that does listen to the code enforcement officer, or if the planning board turns something down.
Help me out, is that who we went to last week?
That was the ordinance review committee.
Okay, there's the ordinance review.
Oh, okay. Isn't that the next step? Is the appeals board when someone turns?
I had suggested he go to the ordinance, he didn't like the ordinance, go to the ordinance review committee.
Well, okay,
And they said, come to you guys and see what you say about
but again, I think that's all bad advice.
it. Okay.
I mean, doesn't the ordinance clearly state that if you turn a permit down, it is appealed to the appeals board?
You're right, I should have done that. He didn't like the ordinance, so.
Well, okay, that might be the next step, but
Ask the ordinance review committee to change it, but.
You know, without getting involved with attorneys and all that sort of thing, which I think this town's had probably too much of, and I certainly don't want to go hire an attorney to do anything about this. I think this is a fairly practical issue that can be resolved amongst gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. But if you take a look at it, you'll also find that it probably infringes on some constitutional rights, beginning with the first one, as far as freedom of expression and freedom of speech on one's private property. That's the first one, first two that come to my mind. So that's why I'm suggesting that you review this and perhaps strike the entire paragraph.
Well, I believe that if it's an ordinance change, it's got to go through
Does
the
it?
whole process. And that's, yeah, I don't know why it's worded that way and so on, but as the chairman said, Board of Appeals, which I believe is the Board of Selectmen.
no,
there
we
is a
have.
separate-
No, there was, yeah, they were only on, call type of a thing, and I know that it's been, no, and it's hard to get them, so it's,
Okay, well, I don't think this board can just, cross something out of the ordinances. It's my view, unless somebody said it shouldn't be there in the first place, which might be different.
Yes.
John's right, we can't just say, well, let's just take this out. We have to send it to the ordinance review committee with guidance. I would say that they ought to seriously look at this. Personally, I look at this and think that this is ridiculous.
it is ridiculous.
I mean, I don't know how long it's been there. It's probably been there for decades. And why it was written in the first place, I have no idea. I just don't know.
Yeah, I agree that this is ridiculous, but there's more to I actually am familiar with the flag, and it's a temporary political flag, I'm thinking. There's another section on signs, political signs, and you're allowed to put up temporary political signs. And this is not, it's made on fabric, but it is a temporary political sign of some sort. Couldn't it be allowable because of that?
That's why it should go to the appeals board. They're the ones who should make that first judgment.
Because it should be you
He
know,
should be able to appeal it, but yeah, I agree with Catherine, if we can't take that out of the ordinance, then somebody needs to.
we should, and then would that have to go to the voters? Because this makes it, if I put up a
Yes.
sign that said, welcome spring,
Right,
you know, a flag, like a
Correct.
pretty flag with
That says
a
spring.
rabbit,
right,
with the word spring, then that would not be allowed in the town of Wiscasset. And that's-
correct.
I don't think we want, you know, a rule like that, it seems silly.
No.
Yeah, I won't point out any businesses, as I said, but we are known for our antiques in this town, and you might find there are a few antique flags flying, which
Correct.
obviously would be in violation.
Well, I can think of other people who have
Me
little
too.
signs up.
Yeah.
There's a difference between a sign and a flag, and I'm sorry, I only gave you the part I was concerned about. If you go through the entire ordinance, that folder, there are a lot of other issues in there too, but this is the only one I want to deal with. But
think
there is
if I-
one that
I think if I-
specifically deals with attached
Well,
signs,
it's okay.
and fixed signs. This doesn't fall under that. This falls under flag and banner.
Well, we can turn it over to the ordinance review committee to look at.
Mhm.
But
But his issue is a separate issue, right? Like, he needs to appeal.
He wants to be able to hang his flag tonight
Yeah.
going home, and I was hoping to grant him that.
But we can't, we don't have the authority to do
You
that.
can't because it's already an ordinance, but I do think you will have to appeal it to the appeals board and how that works.
Send them a letter and cross my fingers they'll meet.
I think they meet when they
When
have
there's- when
occasion
there's-
to meet, and this would be an occasion to meet because someone has something to appeal. So,
And then at the same time, do we need to ask the ordinance review committee to,
We can ask them
and
to
do
look
we have
at
time to
it.
do that before June? We do, right?
yeah.
I
think
doubt that they
will
will be,
hopefully-
they won't have it by
I don't
June.
know if they have time.
Remember, I had to put restrictions on non-essential meetings,
That's
and
correct.
that, you know, that would create a problem, because there's only room for one more meeting on the calendar, whether it can happen or not, because we all have concerns about health and so on, so probably not gonna make it.
Bill?
I had a question through the chair, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Davis, what's on your flag and where is it?
It's on Middle Street, the property's on Middle Street, and it's on the Water Street side.
Okay, but what is the flag? What's on the flag?
It has the word Trump on it. Who's the President of the United States. If you look at this also, it says that flags that have reference to government standings, such as the Maine state flag or anything else that has a government position, that is allowed to fly, but apparently we can't fly one with the President of the United States name on it.
That's all it's on is Trump?
It says jump on the Trump train.
Jump
Ride on the Trump train.
Ride on the Trump.
So he can't appeal this to us?
No,
No.
the appeals board, he has to go to the appeals board, it would be,
Bruce, aren't there exceptions in the sign ordinance for political signs and stuff?
So this
I had
doesn't-
another gentleman call and say, I want to fly
No.
a Saunders flag,
Thank you.
or
Excuse me, what?
you want to fly a Saunders flag or another, or whoever, right? I said, if you're calling it a political sign, then you follow the state rules. But if somebody complains about your flag flying in your yard, I have to do something about it. Someone complained, I found the ordinance, I gave this gentleman a letter, and that was it. I don't, and it was brought up in the conversation with the ordinance review committee with someone else, and I told them, look, I don't have time to ride around town and look for things. If somebody complains, I have to act on it. So, therefore, if somebody complains, I acted. And so here we are.
Well, okay, but nothing in our ordinances cover political signs, I thought. There's nothing.
That's
Yeah, this
what
is
that
the
sign ordinance said, and you've got a copy of that, so.
Yes, I do, but I'm just asking you to be sure.
But as far as the $100 a day fine goes, I have not charged him yet today. So I'm waiting for a decision, just like he is,
I mean,
on
if it
what
was-
to do about this.
A yard sign and not a flag with the same message, it would be fine. The problem is that it's a flag. Because of our ordinance, I mean, I don't think it's a problem, but gee,
It's well defined in the ordinance, unfortunately.
yeah, and it's also unfortunate, this is just a personal opinion, that someone would bother to complain about a flag in someone's own yard that has a political message or whatever. In this case, it's whatever.
Well, that draws me to the constitutional
And,
issue.
I mean, to me, I'm sorry, that's juvenile.
I was gonna say, I think it's a really petty complaint.
Yeah.
You should have the right to.
I don't disagree with you, believe me. Unfortunately, I don't wield the authority to override that.
And we don't either. Ann?
Yes, couldn't you just bring out the book of ordinances and look up and see if there is reference to a political sign?
Oh, I've got it right here.
Here's the sign
Do you have
control law.
Do you have the part that
Sure.
speaks to political signs?
Yep, never leave home without it.
71H, if it's a political sign, provided it conforms to state requirements, that'd be 71H.
Yep.
And the
It's just
state
hard to say.
requirements are just that it doesn't specify flag or sign. It says, it uses the word sign.
So then puts temporary banner, flag, sign. It's all a bit imprecise.
There's other information there about attached signs to buildings, signs that are put in the ground, stanchions in the ground. They all fall in there somewhere, and they're all allowed according to the state regulations. But the flags and banners are a whole different category by themselves.
So what does he need to do?
So, I guess my other question would be then, if there's an appellate board, do they have the authority to actually act on it, or do they send a recommendation to you?
You no.
You are the highest law in the town, so you would.
Not regarding this issue at this point.
Okay.
We can send it to the ordinance review committee and have them look at it, and maybe have a future town vote on it. That is all that we could do at this point.
Okay, so it does have to go in front of the town to be voted on?
For the ordinance change.
Just for you.
Okay,
But seriously, I would at least try the appeals board.
I'll send them a letter.
John, is there anything that we can do as far, I don't know all the legal ramifications as far as going over the appeals board, but, so the select board can't?
Don't know, you'd have to go through it first, but,
Okay.
and then,
Because this is the town ordinance.
I
passed by the town.
I'm trying.
No, I understand. I'm just looking for the direction of the road to travel, that's all.
so
So I've
this
been down a
point,
few already.
I wish we could overturn it. I wish want to apply.
I wish I had heard this several meetings ago. But I appreciate your time anyways, and I will send a letter to them, and thank you very much for your
The
time.
chairman of that, I believe, is Susan.
I would probably guess so.
And Susan Blagden, I believe, is the chair.
Okay. All right. We'll make sure
She's the one that sent me the letter that said that her committee did not want to touch
But
that.
that was a
I understand that,
historical
but I was hoping perhaps at the time it would have been nice if you'd said that. But, well, anyways, I'll have a chat.
Well,
Is there a way, John, that they can meet over the phone, like instead of coming in here? And, because this to me is just a show of hands, do you know
Well,
what I mean?
first off, this has been going on for quite a while, so suddenly a speed up, no disrespect to you, suddenly a rush seems a little inappropriate. However, I believe Augusta is working on how to resolve some of the problems about having large in-person meetings and committees and so on. It was supposed to be maybe ready tonight. I would expect it within a day or two, and it might be possible to arrange a meeting, video type thing.
Okay,
But at this point,
gotcha.
I can't.
Start down all over the place.
Well,
No, I get it.
yeah, if it weren't for the limitations, I mean, we're way over time and we're way over numbers. And, so I guess it seems pretty clear it's got to go to the appeals board, and I think that's where
I would
it's
say
going.
that you could give Maine Municipal a call in the morning,
Yeah.
kind of run it by them and see how state law might apply to this, just, they might have a quick answer.
I assume, Bruce, you got a picture of the flag, I assume? Do you have a picture of the
I
flag?
happen to have one left.
Yeah, I do.
You do, okay. So that'll be, we do that.
Because there are certainly other flags like that flying in town.
Once again,
There's a lot of things in bad taste regardless of.
Well, no, I mean, like, pretty much what he, yes, I haven't seen his particular
Yeah.
stuff, but,
I mean, things flaps.
There's one on 27, it's got a swear word on it.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
Which way? North, south? East, west?
What's
south?
best of?
After school? Really?
Depends on the school.
If I can approach the board again?
Oh, I see. All right. Pretty blue.
Good picture, Don.
Yeah, that's good.
Some
Thank you
people
very
don't have
much.
enough to complain about.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry it took so long.
No, no
No,
problem
thank you,
at
sir.
all. That's
Thank
why
Just
we're
was trying
here.
to speed it along.
Yeah, okay.
All right, am I correct, we are up to number 9 on the agenda?
We're done, so, okay. And
Did
we're going to do the date.
Okay, number 9, unfinished business, ordinance review committee suggestions, revisions to June 1.
All they want to do is, let's see, where's this one here, if you recollect, remember the big package? It came from Jackie Lowe, and it says, these are the ones that require an affirmative vote of the selectmen to put them on the warrant. So they've been through the ORC. Now they've come back to the board to be put on the warrant, and they most certainly will make it. And, let's see, these are amended building law, subdivision article, and glossary, and these many, many pages. Remember you said clear the underlines and so on and so forth, this is the same thing. So,
Yeah, I didn't like that answer.
you know,
All right, I will move that, on the recommendation of the ordinance review committee, that we put articles regarding the glossary, article building laws, and article 7 subdivision on the June 1.
I second it.
Okay, any questions or comments? Not all in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. 10, new business, A. Request to use town property in the First Congregational Church. Yes, they would like to be able to use the town pier for an Easter sunrise service, Sunday, April 12th, 2020. This will be a joint effort with the St. Philip's Episcopal Church. And then they would like to use the town common for an Easter egg hunt on the 12th, April 12th, after their 10 o'clock worship service. The egg hunt would run from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. I think that's an excellent request. I will move that we grant that request.
I will second it.
Any questions or comments?
I love Easter egg hunts.
All those in favor? All right. Next,
would be 10B.
the financial.
I've reviewed this in detail, and I would recommend to the board that they do not approve a waiver of foreclosure. That's the terminology, that's the correct terminology.
Oh, you're on D,
I'm sorry, did I jump something?
B.
the monthly financials.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
They're there for the boards to review.
Right.
All right.
Okay, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead.
No problem. I will move that we deny the deadline extension requested by Gordon James regarding the LED background.
I will second that.
Any questions or comments on that?
Had a question.
Yes.
Is the situation with this guy is that he has the house on the market and he's asking for?
I don't know whether he's got a house in the market, but that's got nothing to do with this
No, it
particular
doesn't.
situation. It's been a long drawn out thing that relates to taxes from 2017.
And has he made any payments in good faith?
He has made a payment that is not adequate based on earlier discussions with the town.
My main reason for voting against this is this person owns 2 pieces of property in town. And you don't extend somebody's not paying taxes when they own 2 pieces of property. So I've never known this to be the way it is.
You said that before when it came before us, so duly noted.
Did I get a second on that? Yes, I do.
I seconded
Are there any other questions or comments on this? All those in favor of denying this? Yes, thank you. And we did the wastewater agreement for the breweries, okay? 11, town managers report. You're up, John.
Okay, I've pretty much covered A. I started off with A. We're in the middle, or maybe only the start of However, this whole virus hazard is going to work out. As I said, we're going to have to modify how we meet. Hopefully, we get some direction from Augusta that will allow us to continue with the necessary, the essential business. And that's the key. If it's essential, we have to do it. If it can be deferred, we're not supposed to take any chances and so on and so forth. Realistically, there's a fair amount of stuff we do have to roll through. So I'm hoping that between the legislature and the governor's office, they figure out something that's workable with us using whatever kind of media that is effective. Now, this does affect the budget committee meeting on Thursday, how we want to deal with that. It is a it's a budget meeting, it's a selectmen's meeting. It could be done the same way as this, if the board wished. But I don't think there's going to be a better time for quite a long while. So how do we bite the bullet, protect the people, allow the involvement of the appropriate people? Not quite sure what the answer is, but
we did agree last week that we would meet Thursday. The selectmen would meet.
Just the
at
budget.
5 o'clock.
So, I mean,
We
the
did
budget
invite,
committee does
we
not
did
have to
invite
be.
them, but, right.
They're allowed to be, well, up to a point they're allowed to be present, but again, we're up against the limitations. It is recommended that we have not more than 10 people in a given thing, unless we want to have the public people at a distance, and since in this case they would not be voting, they could do a video.
Gotcha.
Do a video.
I just, yeah.
At this point, the individuals have to be present physically.
Right.
So that's what we're hoping.
Get some
Clarification.
answer on,
Indeed.
yep.
And the attorney sent me a nice summary of some of the issues that they're trying to resolve. She thought they might be done by today, but guess what?
And I can't imagine the legislature's gonna move that fast.
Well,
But we will get through, we will meet Thursday, but the budget committee doesn't have to be here. The public is certainly welcome, but they know what we're up against. As you said, it will be televised for anybody who wants to watch.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
any official votes will be taken in the selectmen's meeting, which we had agreed would be the 31st of March at this point.
Mhm.
Hopefully, if we can get through what we need to do Thursday, then we can hand it to the budget committee. I'm confident that we will get through this, and there are many options if something should come up. If we have to, we could have an open down meeting. I don't expect that, I don't want it, I really don't. But there are options available to us that I'm confident.
You know where I stand on that.
Yeah, well, me too, but these are very
Different
difficult
times,
times.
absolutely.
I'm confident we will get through this together, I really am. Because for that matter, we've done a lot of work on the budget already.
Spent a lot of time. Okay. Budget update, as you might imagine, there's been some distracting activities, but I've put a fair bit of time in, Kathy has, and Dennis, who's gone. But, so I got nothing to add except we've.
See you Thursday, right?
See you Thursday.
Yep.
Again, we've got our applications, they haven't all been, we haven't all reviewed them all yet, and, until that's happened, we wouldn't be scheduling any further interviews or discussions about the candidates. I haven't even looked at some of the scoring sheets. County tax assessment, is that included in your package? It was. Okay, I can't find it now, but anyway, is that actually the Wiscasset one?
It's from,
Oh, okay.
Michelle,
That's
I think,
making
the
tax,
county.
19, 2020.
she explains it in the letter.
Let's see, 2020 tax commitment is 654,247.28. 654,247.28, and last year it was I'm sliding, 624,975.37, which basically is $30,000 more.
The letter asks
And
if
there's a letter
we want to,
okay.
if we want to pay it.
Oh, no. They requested that we kind of prepay.
Which, am I reading this right, is an increase of 4.68%?
That's their total budget, but this is us.
Yes, I mean, the bottom line, Paul.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, yeah.
Increase decrease is a 4.68% increase.
Yeah, well, you look at some of the others, they're pretty ferocious. You've got, what number 3 down, Bremen, 10%. Who's this? President, God help him, Murphy, get 11.5%. So we're a little bit more than, well, almost exactly what the increase in the county's budget is. So in a way, we're,
Okay, but I'm not gonna cry you tears for the other towns.
oh, come on.
I'm just pointing out ours is up 4.68%, and that's a healthy increase from the county commissioners. That's all I'm saying.
So,
Okay.
that's that one. I think you've got a letter in your package from someone in Senator Collins' office about that possibility of some funding to communities that have been damaged by the closing of a nuclear power plant. Everybody seems to be happy with it, hasn't touched appropriations yet, and my guess would be with all the money being sucked out of it for this coronavirus threat, it'd be a long time before we get anything. However, nice to think that it might happen.
Well, I appreciate her and all our
Yes, indeed.
delegation's efforts.
Yeah, she puts the effort in, and I mean, they're in there swinging, and that's all we can expect of them. Okay, and you've got that sheet there, yes, you, okay. Are you looking at the ORC, March 11th from the ORC? 11th? 11th, yeah.
Yes.
We've done most of this, the board's done most of this already. You've approved the town of Wiscasset sewer system conditional discharge, right? That's good.
Yes.
Approved the addition of a signature line for the wastewater treatment plant manager on the business license. Done that. Number 4, jumping down to that advice, the ORC and the town's decision on adopting the building code in MUBEC for residential structures. And I don't know whether the discussion with that flag, we could ask that the ORC review it, but my understanding is they've sort of looked at it anyway. Did I catch it?
No,
Is that-
They need to make a change though to the sign ordinance, right? That's what we want them to do.
Yeah.
So I can in good faith put up my Happy Spring sign flag.
Also, they looked at it, John, was that they couldn't make a decision.
So is any
It
point
needs to
sending
be
back to them?
reviewed, yeah.
Is any point sending back to them?
Well, it needs to be reviewed, but it probably won't be done this year.
Okay.
Right?
That,
Is
yes.
It definitely needs to be looked at, but
Okay, well, if you wouldn't mind giving me a motion, but want to throw it back at them, or I should say refer to them.
Can I make a motion that we request that the ORC committee review the sign ordinance?
Thank you.
I'll second
Yeah. Well,
Do we want to tell them what to do though, like review the sign ordinance and delete the language about
you know,
words on flags?
it's hard. You know, with the ordinances, some of them have been around a long, long time, and
Decades ago.
as we read them like now.
I get it, that it's just, it got overlooked.
I mean,
There's probably
the
ordinance,
ordinances,
right?
it should be done from start to finish. I mean, very hard to,
Pick
Maybe
that.
if we get a planner, that might happen.
it's like the old ladder truck, you know? How do you fix it or do you replace it?
That thing has been a knot in my side for years.
Okay,
So
so,
that ordinance has probably been there for 25, 30 years without any problems.
what happens is they, as you've seen, they just say reviewed on something 2017, which means something was probably added on top, but nothing different.
Another article, right? Another letter.
Okay, so that's taken care of the last 11F, and then we're up to the assessors.
Do we have to vote on that?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, you do have to, please, if you would.
All those in favor?
Okay, thank you. You are done?
All right. 12, assessors business, A, personal property abatement for the current year to Steele's Landscaping Inc. to the amount of $85.57. This comes recommended from our assessors agent, Hillary Bain.
I move that we approve the personal property tax abatement for Steele's Landscaping in the amount of $85.57 as recommended by the assessor's agent, Ellery G. Bain,
I'll second that.
All those in favor? And B, a personal property abatement, 2016-18, in the amount of $245.19, and this is, it doesn't say it's recommended by the assessors agent, I mean,
It's also deals attached.
It's attached, all the same.
okay.
I make a motion that we approve the personal property tax abatement for Steele's Landscaping Incorporated for the years 2016 to 2018 in the amount of $245.19.
I'll second that.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Should be something for us to
There's,
sign.
Jackie didn't show up, and she hasn't, yeah, so we get the paperwork in due course.
Is there any other board business? Yes.
Sorry, I should have brought this up earlier. I
That's
just wanted you to be aware that a petition to repeal the historical preservation ordinance got turned into the office today.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other business? So just to reiterate, everybody, please listen to the health officials and do what they say. It's gonna get rough, and we don't wanna lose anybody, seriously.
It's gonna be, it's going to start.
Can we close with just remembering the chairman, Judy Colby, tonight?
Oh, actually, I promise I'd wait for her.
That's what I was gonna
I'm
say.
sure she's watching. Hi, Judy.
Stay well.
All right, I entertain, if there's nothing else, I entertain a motion for adjournment.
That we adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Dennis's thing.
Did you break it, Ken?
Hey, sure, that's great. I bet that was the best call.
Yours is the best call I got all day.
What?